right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Orick. Once again, I'm on the move. I'm uptown New Orleans now, so I kind of bounce around right now while my house is getting worked on. Anyway, sorry couldn't do a show last week. Internet problems for me. They've gotten resolved, but the router that was supposed to come in on Tuesday did not show up until yesterday. So, I mean, what's that about?
The Braves just eliminated the Brewers.
Okay. We got the UL game going on in the other room, so.
I'm sorry to hear that.
They're playing Appalachian State, so.
They're tough.
Yeah, that's probably their toughest. That and now Georgia Southern are probably their two tough. No, Coastal Carolina. That's what it is. Coastal Carolina, probably the two toughest teams they play in that division.
How about the Rolling Turd going down?
Hey, I have a good friend who's an Aggie, and I was going to call her during the game, but I knew better. I don't need to have profanity of that level in my ear, and the phone slammed down because I called her during a game. So that's
the way I am, because I have to watch the game on my phone, and I've told everybody, I love y'all. Don't text me. Don't call me. Don't reach out to me. Leave me the hell alone. And I just want to do a real quick shout out to the NFL Network in the form of a gesture.
About what? What did they do to
you? Game day final. Okay. I come in and I think, well, I'll get to see the parts of the game that I missed. For the third week in a row, you got to see basically a play-by-play recap of the Kansas City Chiefs, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Green Bay Packers, and you got 2 plays of the Saints game.
Welcome to life post Drew Brees. This is what, all the Jim Mora years, this is what it was like when you were watching the Dome Patrol. You got, unless they played the 49ers, then they showed almost the entire game.
Right. Yeah.
Because we lost that game. But when the Saints played the Bears, or they played Tampa Bay, or they played Atlanta, you got to see maybe one touchdown we threw. You got to see a sack, and you got to see a lot of highlights from the other team, and that was it.
Yep.
That's what guys, the people want to know what it's like post Drew Brees, in pre Drew Brees. That's what it was like. Sorry.
I think they suck anyway.
Who?
That guy that does, I can't even remember his name.
I haven't watched NFL Network since they took it off AT&T Uverse. And I think Cox Cable, who I used to have, got rid of him even earlier than that. It's nothing but, Good Morning Football is now from 4 or 5 in the morning till noon. Yeah. And then they replay part of it. Like you didn't miss something. So, it's nothing.
Well, as long as the camera's on Kay Adams, that's not a problem.
Oh, right.
You can mute it and it's still just as entertaining.
All right, John Gruden. We don't need you getting kicked off the show for these comments.
but listen, the NFL Network and ESPN. I've said it on the air with you guys. I've said it on my own show. I've said it to people publicly and privately. ESPN and NFL Network, coverage is beyond a joke. And the ESPN is what I grew up with, what all three of us grew up with.
Sure.
Prime time with Tom Jackson, Chris Berman. Their pregame show with Jackson Berman, a couple other guys. It was just spectacular coverage, and I lived for it. But now
that was back when they actually had people that knew what the hell they were talking about, not eye candy and former jocks that think they have an opinion on things. That's all it is now. Every show like that is formulaic, and by that I mean you have one reasonably attractive woman, more oftentimes than not with a low cleavage shot. You have a former jock you have a correspondent that is supposed to be a writer.
But what's happened is now it's cheaper for them to make their own programming than it is for them to, get the rights to other programming.
Yeah.
I mean, ESPN used to be all about Sports Center. Sports Center was when you got the sports news, and the rest of the time you had programming like, Australian rules football. You had the CFL. You had, their day was filled with actual sports programming. It could be the log tossing contest, but it's still sports. Okay.
Yeah.
And what's happened today is, okay, so you start with pardon the interruption. Then you decide they're going to do some kind of basketball version, hoop something. Then NFL Live. And then, Baseball Tonight they started doing. And, so suddenly their shows become nothing but the split screen, two guys talking, arguing. And there's if you try and watch sports during the day, there really isn't any sports. It's mostly these talking heads screaming at each other about sports and politics and religion and whatever it is, whatever the news of the day. That's what ruined ESPN.
And ironically, it's the kind of thing that set the podcast world ablaze. Because I mean, what do we do on here? Now, the big difference is between the two. People like us get on, people like, Kyle, John Hendricks, certainly Mike Detillier. If you're a New Orleans Saints fan, and everybody tuning in tonight, Who Dat Nation, thank you for tuning in. Everybody tuning in tonight, I assume, is a New Orleans Saints fan. So you want to know about your Saints. But the issue I have with ESPN and NFL Network is, again, in theory, it works because it's a sports debate. But it's a sports debate between guys who don't know what the hell that they're talking about and are too lazy to do any research to learn. And that's where I have the issue. And most of these shows are completely unwatchable now to me. Not to toot my own horn, but tune into us, folks. Tune into Brandon and I doing the pregame and the halftime shows. Tune into Kyle and I doing the postgame shows. If you're New Orleans Saints related, certainly that's the way to go. Carolina Panthers, yeah. In other words, tune into your own podcast, your own team's podcast. You're going to learn far more, about your team and the upcoming opponent than you would by tuning into ESPN or NFL Network.
No, because it's about hot takes too. They want to say something outrageous because social media exists now, which didn't exist in the 90s, and that now becomes the focus of their programming. They want to say something outrageous. Stephen A. Smith will say something outrageous, or Max Kellerman, and then you'll see for the next
he's a shithead
all day, people commenting about Chris Sims's horrible quarterback list, or whatever it is. Stephen A. Smith doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, and that's what they want now.
Stephen A. Smith is a modern version of Jim Rome. That's all he is.
Well, that was funny because ESPN2 used to be the edgy sports.
Right.
That's where the extreme sports came from. And that's where really the hot take kind of talk shows went to, Jim Rome and, Rome is burning and all the rest. And the thing I can remember most, and I promise we'll get to Saints football in a second, but the thing I do remember most when you brought up primetime, I used to watch Sunday Night Football when it was on ESPN. And then after that would come Sports Center. Then I'd watch NFL primetime because now they would have the Sunday night game in there. And then after that, they would show NFL films to 1 or 2 in the morning.
I loved it.
And I, here I am dating myself, but I had the VCR all fired up to go. Boom, I'm taping this. And that's how I got to watch so much of NFL films, because it showed all the 70s and 80s NFL film stuff, and all that's gone. I mean, none of that exists anymore. And it's really depressing because it was a lot of fun. Hi, I'm Steve Sable. you know, and he'd start on with whatever it is he was going to talk about, you know, and I lived for that, you know.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
great.
that's how you learn.
Well, you appreciate the history of the game that way
Right.
too. And you know, Steve Sable's. Somebody says, "What's a VCR?" Look who's joining in. Yeah, what's a VCR? Yeah, all right, all right.
All right, Bob.
It's what the Dallas Cowboys can watch the Super Bowl highlights on. That's what a VCR. That's what a VCR is.
Speaking of dating yourself, ourselves rather. Alan, is that Archie Bunker's chair you're sitting in?
Get out of my chair. This is a chair. This room I'm in actually is kind of a library / study with a bathroom right there. So that's fitting. All the books are right here. But anyway, because that's usually my library and study. But yeah, they've got, a globe over here, a secretary, and it's like, it reminds me of, okay, you remember the cartoon Underdog, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so between the two Underdog episodes, Bullwinkle was the same way. You get Tennessee Tuxedo. You would get what was his name? Something General Bragg. That's what it was, General Bragg. And he talks about some story that he, went off and did some kind of safari or something like that, and these incredible adventures happen. Anyway, that's when I see that globe in this chair, I think of General McBragg. So. And I'm totally.
Boy, did we hit a rabbit hole there.
I'm totally dating myself. The fact that I know Underdog and those cartoons and stuff. So.
And Archie Bunker.
And Archie Bunker. I mean, if you know the expression Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the greatest. You have seen Tennessee Tuxedo. Anyway, oh look, we got all kinds of people joining in. I've got a VCR. Yeah, here we go. All right. Damn, Alan, I was going to say that. Anyway, so yeah, it's part reminiscing on this show. All right, so we've had two games. We had, the theme of tonight's show is a roller coaster because, the Saints started week 1, blowing out the Packers, then lay an egg against Carolina. Then they win the following week against New England, looking very good. Then they lay an egg against the Giants, mainly in the fourth quarter. And then they play a pretty good game against the Washington football team, or for Bob's sake, the team formerly known as the Redskins. And my daughter's knocking on the door, and I can't get to the door right now. So anyway, so I mean, how do you see this game? How do you see this team, Bob? Do you see this team as a team that looks like it's going to be great one week, bad next week? Where's the consistency in this?
Alan, the consistency is that there is no consistency. Yeah, it's a very Jekyll and Hyde team, and I remember conversations you and I had during training camp, wondering if this was going to be what the Saints were going to be like early in the year. And remember, folks, this team has a cornucopia. I've been dying to say that word. A cornucopia of talent that has been sitting on the injured list. 10 players that were either starters or major contributors, have played one game or less for the Saints this year. And all of those guys, not all will be back after the bye week, but we'll see many back onto the field, and just about all of them within a couple of weeks after this Sunday's bye. I think at that point, we're going to start to finally see what the New Orleans Saints team is really going to be like when they are at, I'm going to say, full earth strength, because nobody's going to be at full strength from here on out.
No.
Yeah, and until then, I think this team has done a hell of a job at getting to 3-2. But the way that they have done it has absolutely, infuriated me, and I know much of the Saints fan base. because it's just so up and down. I actually I expected them to be 3-2, given all the injuries and all the obstacles up to this point. I just didn't expect them to lose to Carolina and to the Giants, and especially to the Giants in their first game back in the Dome after being displaced. All the emotion that should have been involved with the with the whole surrounding event, and especially the team, it just wasn't there. And they're showing the mark of a young team in so many ups and downs and waves and momentum. And that's disappointing because it's an experienced coaching staff with seasoned leadership in that locker room. And that's what has to settle down. I don't think it's going to be this way all year long once they get these players back, once they recover from the bumps and bruises coming out of the bye week. But right now, this is a Jekyll and Hyde team until they prove us wrong.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of people say, this team should be 4-1. And
they should.
But coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Probably, but it's also possible they could be 2-3 because, like you said, the momentum shifts and the things that happen. There's like one or two plays. If they go the other way, this team loses. So it's a very thin margin. And yeah, Sean Payton's finding different ways to win games. But there's a thin margin, and it's very much a struggle now for this team to win games. Sean, they signed another kicker. So that tells me that Will Lutz probably will not be back after the bye. Because they put Cody Parkey on injured reserve. I don't know why. I mean, I know he claims he injured his groin before the game warming up. But I don't know why they kept him, but they did.
You'll probably hear in the not too distant future that he's been released with a
injury settlement.
Injury settlement, yeah.
And I know Alan was about to ask you a question, Sean, but I do have an updated. They made a flurry of moves this afternoon. Releasing Parkey from injured reserve about an hour after putting him on was one of them. Okay. They also released Desmond Trufant, Brian Poole, and they released Derek Kelly and Wynton McManus from the practice squad. They brought back Christian Ringo and signed him to the active roster. And then, like you said, Alan, they signed Brian Johnson, the kicker off of the Bears practice squad.
So to me, that tells me that, Lutz's injury, because they're obviously monitoring this, Lutz's injury means he is probably severe enough that he has not fully recovered enough for them to trust him kicking. They probably want to bring him along a lot slower. So, that revolving door is going to go for a little while. Donald points out that Onyemata will be back. Onyemata's out for 6 games, not 6 weeks. So he has to miss the Seattle game. He can't come back until after the Seattle game, which I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I think that's the Tampa game on Halloween night. Okay.
The list of players, and I actually have an article coming out tomorrow morning outlining this, but the list of players that are either eligible to come off injured reserve or could be healthy or projected to be healthy in time for Seattle. Offensively, Michael Thomas, Tre'Quan Smith, Nick Vanette, Teron Armstead, Eric McCoy. Defensively, Marcus Davenport, Quan Alexander, Ken Crawley, and Will Lutz. Now, like you said, and I'm so sorry to keep interrupting. Like you said, Lutz is almost assuredly going to fit for at least a couple more weeks. And people like Thomas, Quan, people like that have to be medically cleared. So don't be shocked if we don't see everyone back for this Seattle game. It might take a couple weeks, but reinforcements are indeed coming.
Yeah, and that was where I was going with this question, Sean. How much better do you think this team, well, not better, but consistent, how much more consistent will this team be once we get guys like Michael Thomas? And we're going to skip Will Lutz for now, but, David Onyemata, how much more consistent will this team be getting those kind of guys back?
Well, I think that it bodes well to trend that direction as far as getting more consistent, because You have seasoned leadership on the field across the board. You have these guys that are leaders and these guys that are quality players back on the field for you. That can only be a good thing to me.
Yeah, Bob. So, who do you think is probably going to be the most important guy to get back at this point right now?
You stole my thunder because I was going to ask you guys that very question. Look,
Okay.
the easy answer is Michael Thomas.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm not to interrupt you. My youngest daughter's dog is running around here at about 100 miles an hour, like Speedy Gonzalez. I have a crack in his door, and he thinks that's the funniest thing. And I mean, he is hauling ass, and his hardwood floors, all he is. So I'm sorry. I just had to point that out. Go ahead.
and the Speedy Gonzalez reference too. We bring that one in. We're going to date ourselves again.
And his cousin Slowpoke Rodriguez.
I love Slowpoke Rodriguez.
Yes.
But listen, the easy answer is Michael Thomas, and that's probably the correct one. Michael Thomas, a player like Michael Thomas will just boost the entire offense, not just the passing game. It'll make Jameis Winston better. It'll free up room for Alvin Kamara, and it'll leave Marquez Callaway, Deontay Harris, Kenny Stills with less focused coverage on him, on them. Excuse me. But I'm going to say, and in my heart of hearts, I truly believe that a healthy Michael Thomas is the right answer. But I think this team really, really, really misses Marcus Davenport, a healthy Marcus Davenport, and even more importantly, Eric McCoy. We've seen this offensive line struggle like no other lines have during the Sean Payton era. And being without Armstead hurts. Ramczyk is not playing at his true capability, and those are both factors. But when they had to move Cesar Ruiz, who was coming along fairly nicely at right guard, when they had to move Ruiz into the middle to take McCoy's place, it showed how valuable McCoy is, both from a skill level and a communication factor with that entire offensive line. So I'm here to say that I believe that Eric McCoy's return is every bit as important to this offense, to this football team, as what Michael Thomas is.
Agreed.
Yeah. I think that's hurt a lot because I think Ruiz, he's sort of learning on the job right now, which is just another challenge for this team with so many young players. You don't have Drew Brees to lean on to make the calls. We're going to talk more about Jameis Winston in a minute, but since you don't have a Drew Brees that can make the calls, Ruiz is trying to learn how to make the calls after spending all training camp and off season preparing to play right guard. So he's kind of thrust in. It's a bit of a learning curve for him as well. So not having Eric McCoy to kind of lean on to be, believe it or not, Eric McCoy is Teron Armstead is older, but Eric McCoy is pretty much the leader of that interior. So yeah, and you're right. The lack of pass rush that we've seen over the past couple of weeks is showing because of Marcus Davenport not being there. And I think we have gotten a lot softer versus the run, in large part because we lost Malcolm Brown and Sheldon Rankins, one by trade, one by free agency. And David Onyemata, who we were counting on to step up, has been suspended 6 games. So you've got guys like Shai Tuttle and Malcolm Roach. Both of those are more, backup kind of players, guys who only play a limited amount of snaps, playing in a much larger role. So the longer they're out there, the more their weaknesses show up. So Onyemata is huge. And I do agree. I think Michael Thomas will be huge for the offense to lessen the burden on Alvin Kamara because Winston seems to be getting more comfortable with these receivers, and these receivers seem to be getting better with Winston. Yeah. But again, it's that learning curve. So I'm going to ask you, Bob, then I'm going to ask you, Sean. First off, Jameis Winston, what is your, I don't want to say grade, but your evaluation of his play so far as a Saints quarterback?
Jameis Winston as a player is about where I would expected him to be at this stage of the year. And if I were to assign a grade, I would probably give him a C plus B minus kind of thing. He hasn't turned the ball over. We have talked together and separately about Sean Payton clearly not having the full trust and confidence in Jameis. I think the last 2 weeks we're starting to see that come around a little bit. But part of that is on Jameis too. We've talked about the pass protection not being up to par, the receiving core not getting the proper and consistent separation. But it's on Jameis because Jameis almost didn't trust what he sees at first, and paralysis by analysis, trying to avoid the mistake. Now we've seen what this offense can be with Jameis, and it's not just the deep ball. I thought he played a really gutsy game against Washington, moving away from pressure, running when he had to, taking some vicious shots. That's what kind of player Jameis Winston can be. Saints fans, he's no Drew Brees, and I think it's unfair to expect him to be. But if he could be the best Jameis Winston, the good Jameis Winston that we even saw out of Tampa Bay, and we saw flashes of that against both the Giants and the Redskins. This is still a playoff team with that Jameis Winston. Can he be better? Yeah. And part of that has to do with the pieces around him and the coaching confidence. But Jameis has to learn to just let it loose too. A lot of these sacks he's been taking, especially against New England and Carolina, were of his own doing. Yeah, pass protection broke down, but there were opportunities to at least get rid of the ball, tuck the ball, and run. I think that's going to improve as the season goes along. And like you said before, he seems to be getting more confident in his receivers and vice versa. So I think we're going to see more playmakers, more plays out of this unit as a whole.
Okay, Sean, similar question. You're Sean Payton. Now, you didn't get to watch I know you missed the first half of the game.
Yeah.
But I think this was in the third quarter. At one point, Sean Payton lit into Jameis when he got to the sideline. In fact, he sought him out. He didn't just wait for him to come walk over to the sideline. He went, put the play card to the side, went out there and lit him up. Do you think Sean Payton has a lack of trust in Winston, or do you think Sean Payton is trying to mold Jameis into a different kind of quarterback than what we've seen so far out of his career in Tampa?
Probably a little bit of both. I can see where, I mean, realistically, Sean Payton has to have the same concerns that all of us voiced when it comes to putting Jameis Winston under center. The 30 and 30 season. Mm-hmm. And we've seen some bonehead throws, some that worked, some that didn't. But I think the graphic that I saw was with Winston, you have 14 touchdowns versus 3 interceptions. I'm not saying that concern isn't still there, but I believe Peyton's bringing him along slowly and not just trusting him sight unseen to be the leader of this team.
I can see that. Here we go. We're going to cause some trouble now. It's funny. Russell Wilson is really living the Drew Brees life because Aaron Donald jacked up his finger too. So,
it's a gift.
And we won't be playing we won't be playing Russell Wilson in Seattle. Right. We will be playing we'll be playing Geno Smith.
And I'm going to tell you, if he plays anything like he did in the second half of that game the other day, we're in for a long day.
Well, they have a lot of talent, and I will be interested to watch Seattle this Sunday. I think they play on Sunday. But anyway, I'd be interested to watch Seattle this week to see how they play with a whole game of Geno Smith.
Yeah.
Because Geno Smith has had flashes.
Yeah.
Granted, he was with the Jets, and that's a career ender. But for the most part, obviously he's no Russell Wilson, but he's got some talented receivers, and we're going to talk more about this next week. But it'll be a huge challenge for this defense. So we do need as many people as possible on defense ready to play, because I think the Seattle defense is suspect enough that we should be able to score on them.
Yes.
If the good Jameis shows up more than the bad, like we've seen so far. My own take on Jameis is he is on pace. I think somebody posted this. He's on pace to throw 40 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, 11 interceptions, something like that. But not even breaking 3,000 yards passing in the 17-game season.
If he throws 40 touchdowns, I don't give a damn how many yards he throws for.
Well, and that's I don't think he throws 40 touchdowns this year. I just he's getting these things in bunches. But the stat you brought up, the 14 touchdowns versus 3 interceptions looks great. Low yardage, not so great. Be throwing that many scores and that few of interceptions. The Saints are deadly in the red zone right now, but between the 20s, they seem to have a hard time finding their rhythm, finding that groove to start moving the chains and getting this offense rolling. And we saw that even in the Washington game. There was when Jameis threw that Hail Mary, that Marcus Callaway caught, he went 1 for 10, counting that Hail Mary pass, 1 for 10 into the third quarter, where, he threw some catchable balls, but the receivers weren't catching it, especially the wheel route to Alvin Kamara. That was a great pass, and Kamara usually brings that down. He just didn't bring that one down. But you get these long stretches of this offense struggling to get first downs. They go 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 5 and out, that kind of thing. And I think we saw that even in the Giants' loss. They struggled to get things going. They had the first 2 possessions, great field position. You should have put points on the board. One, you ended up punting or going for it, I think, instead of kicking a field goal because you had no faith in your kicking game. And it took the team a while to get going. And it's almost like Jameis needs a bomb or a deep shot to kind of get his mojo going. And that's concerning to me beyond the statistics. And I think that's the issue that a lot of people who don't trust Jameis or feel uncomfortable with Jameis have is like, I don't want to spend all season comparing to Drew Brees because nobody's can be compared to Drew Brees, but I'm going to compare him a little bit to Bobby Hebert. Bobby with Jim Moore's offense always scored on that first drive. It was a field goal, but they always scored in that first drive. They got into rhythm early. Their lulls would always happen at the end of games, third and fourth quarter. That's when the team would struggle, wouldn't get points, or would run out of steam. It's almost like this team just has a hard time getting traction and getting that first drive and putting points on the board early in the game to really get the offense rolling. And it's a combination of things, but because it's a quarterback driven league, you look at the quarterback and say, okay, that's the problem. Do you think, and I'm going to ask you this, Sean, then I'm going to ask Bob the same kind of question. Do you think that the Saints probably should have brought in or need to bring in another running back to kind of help this offense get going, a power back, someone who can take the load off Alvin Kamara, maybe get this running game more consistent?
Well, I believe that was the whole point of Tony Jones being here. But, I mean, with him being hurt, it probably wouldn't hurt to bring in somebody to spell off Kamara, because you're using Kamara in the run game, you're using Kamara in the pass game.
Well, you did in the Giants game, which you now used him a lot in the Redskins Washington game. I knew I'm going to say it all night. I know I will. It's like saying Los Angeles Chargers or the San Diego Chargers. They're always going to be the San Diego Chargers to me, you know.
Yeah.
So,
there's no such thing as the Las Vegas Raiders. That's just diametrically opposed to common sense. Much like the former head coach.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is funny. Bears fans trying to hack Matt Nagy's emails after hearing about John Gruden. That's a good one.
I would love to know exactly what he said.
Well, they told you what he said. They told you what he had said in the.
Oh, they just made vague references.
He used a racial trope to mock DeMaurice Smith. That's I kind of want to call him DeMario, and I knew that wasn't right. To mock Smith, and he swears that it wasn't a racial trope. And you know, what was sad about it is, you know, both Tony Dungy and on the Sunday night broadcast, Tony Dungy and Mike Tirico both said, "Look, I've known John for a long time. I've worked with him. This is not who he is. It was a bad use of language, but that doesn't mean he's a racist." You know, in fact, Dungy even said that. He says not everything is racist, but the next day,
it is nowadays.
Well, yes, but
even stuff that's not is.
Yeah,
well,
but this was, and there, you know, the racist slurs, homophobic slurs. He trashed corrupt Nazi MF-er Roger Goodell. Which I thoroughly enjoyed. That to me.
Well, Saints fans kind of said, if he just left the Goodell stuff, we were like,
right.
No, I agree with that. But yeah, he made a.
See, that just goes to prove, even in the worst of circumstances, there's always something good there.
No, the Saints probably would have hired him as general manager for the Roger Goodell thing, or at least made him king of Bacchus. But no, he made a comment about the Rams drafting Michael Sam. He made a comment about I'm trying to remember the whole thing because I just looked at it and I was like, I don't remember the whole thing, but it was another racial comment. And it was much stronger, much harder to deflect than what he said, what the email they said earlier. And there's two things that popped in my mind. I think number one, there's even worse emails that are coming that can come out. And I think somebody, because these are 10-year-old emails, I think somebody wants Gruden out. And that's why they release these things. Because you're telling me, and this is not a defense of Gruden, what anything Gruden said, but you're telling me that Gruden goes to Monday Night Football. He is working Monday Night Football. No email comments, nothing. Gets out of Monday Night Football, becomes the Raiders coach. This isn't just the first year of being a Raiders coach. He's been a Raiders coach for a few years now. Nothing is said. Nothing comes out about this. And now that the Raiders are somewhat decent, playing in front of a crowd in Las Vegas, trying to build a fan base out there, trying to make this team the Las Vegas Raiders, where you and I and Bob all know them as either the Oakland or even the Los Angeles Raiders. Somebody wants him gone for some reason. And that's why they release these things.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, as far as the reasons why they were released and the timing of it, you can question both of that. But the bottom line is John Gruden was flat out wrong. And he deserved. He resigned. Officially, but he deserved to lose his job over this. And and I can't even say unfortunately. Sadly, he's probably done in this business altogether.
Yeah.
And deservedly so. The comments that you make, I don't care whether you call them jokes or not. Listen, we all skirt the line. Different lines. When we joke or poke fun at each other or others, but he crossed so far over all lines, all lines of sensitivity. And folks, you guys know me. I don't consider myself a sensitive guy. I hate this cancel culture, but there's a line to everything. And John Gruden crossed that line. He deserves to be punished, and he deserves his career to be over. He did that.
Well, you're talking about a man that's in a position of authority over other men. Mm-hmm. You're talking about a man that is in the eye of the public constantly. I don't care who or what you are. You have to hold yourself to a higher standard than to be pulling this kind of crap.
Well, it's the standard we should all be held to. Nobody should talk, think, or act like that. Period and end of story. Obviously, I might be a little bit more sensitive, than the average person, given my family dynamic. But I've always felt that way. I don't, and I don't see in color, and I was raised not to see in color. But again, this world is full of racist, bigoted people, and regardless of the title, you should be held accountable when you step over that line.
Absolutely.
His comments about Michael Sam is, and he has a openly gay player on his roster. Mm-hmm. His racial comments, and he has majority black players that play for him. So it's hard to command the respect to be the head coach. Once that kind of stuff comes out, I say it's unfortunate only from the standpoint of he's ruined his own legacy by doing this, typing this in an email. It's one thing to make these kind of comments to a friend who you think won't get offended by it, and they're not on the record, and they're not going to be repeated because there's no transcript of this. It's just something that someone said. It's nothing to put it in an email. That's what gets you in trouble. And because you've just made it permanent. Okay? You can't erase something. It's like posting things on the internet. You can't take that back. So it's unfortunate because, and I don't want to use this as an excuse because it's not an excuse, but someone he could have been angry, he could have been drunk, he could have had anything happen to him. It could have been a bad time in his life, period. Okay, and he says these things, but once you put it out there, once you type it and put it for the whole world, well, not even the whole world to see, but the whole world has the ability to see it. Now you're stuck with it. Now that's who you are. One of the things that we talk about over and over on this show when it comes to Jameis Winston is the 30 and 30 year. 33 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. That is who he is. We've said this on the show. Once you've done that, that's how people are going to know you as the 30 interception guy. And you have to fight that image for the rest of your life. The rest of Jameis's professional career, he's got to fight the 30 interception image. But he's the turnover guy. And that's what's unfortunate about it for me, because Gruden did a lot of good things as a coach, including his friendship with Sean Payton. Sean Payton is a much better head coach because of his time with John Gruden. The Raiders should have gone to the Super Bowl in 2001 because of John Gruden. And if it wasn't for an obscure rule, the Tuck rule, the Raiders do go to that Super Bowl, instead of the Patriots. And, it's that's the kind of stuff. That's what disappoints me because I liked John Gruden. I liked the Chucky thing and all that stuff. I like John Gruden as a coach, as a personality. I don't know the man personally. I don't know anything about him personally, but I liked the kind of coach he was. And I liked the persona he put out there. And now all that's gone and it's ruined because Chucky, the Tuck rule, the Super Bowl championship, why Spider, why banana, that play he's known for, all that's gone. It disappeared that quickly. So that's what bothers me the most about all of this. They're pulling his name off the Ring of Honor, in Tampa. Just like poor Darren Sharper. You watch 2009 Saints highlights. And I love Darren Sharper that season. He was probably arguably one of my favorite players of that season, and the interceptions he made were my favorite plays that season. But now you watch replays of the game, and okay, here's the Darren Sharper interception against Philadelphia where he runs it all the way back, and you just like going, and this son of a bitch drugged women and raped them. That's all it passes your mind now, and that's how I feel about this thing with John Gruden. It's not a defense of what he did, not a defense of what he said, but it's now when you watch the highlight, the Super Bowl, what was it, 41? No, 30.
38 or 39.
38 or 39. There's two things I think about. The one, the Raiders player who just took off the night before the game. And
I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, and now John Gruden. That's one more thing that you can't look at anymore. John Gruden playing the role of Rich Gannon, running the Raiders offense because he knew it so well, teaching Tampa how to beat it. That's gone. You can't look at that anymore. Now it's like, okay, that's who this guy is. And that's what's sad about it.
And there's no room. And I feel bad. I don't feel bad for John Gruden. I feel bad because it happened. Because there's no room. There's zero room for that in this culture. There should have been zero room for that in all cultures. But supposedly we've evolved. I can't even say that with a straight face. Supposedly we as a society have evolved. And supposedly we're going to take a harder stance against racism and against bigotry. So when it happens, that person, those people need to immediately be held accountable. I've said this all along. Forget statues, forget flags, forget the fact whether you kneel, stand, or jump up and down. I don't care about all that. Stop with the behavior, the comments, the actions. That's who you are. The comment, the action, the negative one, they need to stop. I don't know how to put it any more clearly than that.
There isn't, and I went on way too long about it too. That's just to me, that's what's unfortunate about the entire situation. To me, is all the good that he had done as a player and a coach is gone. And that's what you're getting. That's what you're getting at too, Bob. I think is that we have a culture in a society now that doesn't tolerate that anymore. And it is a good it is a good thing because that is how you evolve. It is how you become better. I say this all the time. This is for all the talk of how much racism there is in the world and how much bigotry there is in the world and stuff. We are still more tolerant and more accepting than at any point in human history. Any point. Because it doesn't mean we're perfect. It doesn't mean it's this we should be satisfied. It just means this is the progression of society. This is how it works. You know, my parents' generation, um, segregation was still around.
Yep.
It was, and my grandparents' generation, segregation was in full force. So their attitudes about racism and racial relationships. My grandparents, my parents are much more liberal about race relations than my grandparents were. And I am more than my parents. And my kids are more than me. And it doesn't mean that I'm a bigot or my parents are bigots. My grandparents were bigots, but that's, I mean, it's funny. My grandmother had, and I promise I'm not going to go much longer into this, but my grandmother was one of those people. To a stranger, they were whatever, but if she knew you, if you were if you were in her circle of friends, oh, that's my friend. What's the difference? What's the difference between that one and that one? Well, I know her. So, that, I mean, that's how my grandmother would rationalize that. And I don't mean that in a negative, I mean, yeah, to especially my daughter's generation, she's just like, she'll be aghast by that. But, you know, I, I don't agree with it, but I get it. I get my grandmother's way of rationalizing things. So it's just, no, Danny, my brother, we didn't have that. No, I'm talking about our parents. You know, they grew up in the era of segregation. We didn't. Segregation was gone. Especially by the time you were born. Um, but my parents, when they were kids, yeah, they had segregated schools. So, anyway, like I said, I'm going on way too long about this. I didn't want to go into that much detail, but that's just a difference. And I'm an optimistic guy, annoyingly optimistic. I see things more as half full. So I'm always, even in a negative situation like this, 20 years ago, John Gruden, that wouldn't have made him resign. He might have got in trouble, might have got fined by the league, but now he has to resign for it. And you may not like it, but that's considered progress. At least in my mind, that's progress because we are less tolerant of that. So, anyway, Bob, I didn't get to finish asking that question because we went on the John Gruden kick, but I asked Sean about a power back. Do you think that's what the Saints kind of need to help get this offense to be much more consistent? Is a power back?
I actually don't. And I say that hoping that I'm right, because who are you going to get at this point in the season? I don't see him making a swing and a trade for anybody. I'm like Sean. I've always liked Tony Jones Jr. He's not the old school power back, but he is the kind of guy that can pick up those tough yards between the tackles and either give Kamara a breather or allow the offense to move Alvin into the slot in motion out of the backfield or even line him out wide. As long as you have somebody that can do that, and it doesn't matter whether it's Tony Jones, a guy off the scrap heap, or even Taysom Hill, if used correctly, Sean Payton. As long as you have a guy that can do that, you're okay. But I don't think that that's what this offense needs to get them over the top. First and foremost, they need the line to perform more consistently, whether it's when McCoy and Armstead get back or whether it's with the guys out there. I don't think the line played particularly well against Washington. Again, if you're going to grade them, maybe a C to a C minus.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly better than what we have seen in other games this season. but the offensive line has been more inconsistent than I've seen out of the unit in many years. That's where I think the offensive improvement starts, and then you guys get guys like Michael Thomas back, Jameis Winston more into a groove or a rhythm, like you said. Use Alvin Kamara like you did against Washington, as opposed to the way you used him against New England or New York, because the way you used him against Washington plays to Alvin's strengths. You sacrifice some rushing yards when you do that, but we still saw the Saints move the ball pretty effectively. Between the 20s, you're right. They went. Whichever one of you said it, they did go through a little bit of a lull in that game, allow allow Washington to get back into the game a little bit, but they still moved the ball effectively without having a dominant run attack. If that makes sense, it makes sense in my head the way I said it.
No, and that's going to lead to my next question about the offensive line. And Sean, I'm going to ask you this one now. How much of this offensive line problem would you attribute? Because they were considered a strength, okay, going into camp. If we had to put down what was the strength of this team, offensive line would probably be number 3, number 2. Behind probably Alvin Kamara in the running game. Do you think that this offensive line's problems are injury related, or is it more getting used to having Jameis back there versus Drew Brees?
I don't buy into the Jameis theory. I don't see it that way. I think that the injuries have played a great role in the struggles that they've had this season so far. But I really, those guys are pros. They've played with different quarterbacks before. They've played with Teddy Two Gloves and with Taysom and all those others, as well as with Drew Brees. So I don't think that that's a part of it at all.
Bob, same question for you. Do you think it's the offensive line's problems stem more from injuries or from having Jameis back there as opposed to Drew?
I tell you what, Sean, you brought up a great point about playing with the different quarterbacks, their cadences, what they call out, what they're given the freedom to do and not. And it's an angle that I hadn't really thought of. I did lay a portion of the blame on Jameis and his ability to recognize protections and call out different protections. But I've always put the major onus on the players up front, those 5 players. Now, listen, when you lose a guy like Eric McCoy and Teron Armstead, you're going to have a dip in production. But ironically, James Hurst, who's replaced Armstead at left tackle, he's not the issue. He's arguably their most consistent lineman since Teron went out. The problem again is, and the problem isn't Calvin Throckmorton. I think Throckmorton has played very, very well for the expectations set on him coming in. The problem is coming from the guys you wouldn't expect it to. Andrus Peat, a Pro Bowler, continues to get his ass whipped in pass protection. Cesar Ruiz, a first-round draft choice, looks like a JV player going against Alabama. Since he's taken over at center, especially in pass protection. And Ryan Ramczyk looks like aliens took over his body and replaced him with Andrus Peat. That's where the struggles come in. And part of that, and I get part of the whole continuity and communication thing. All 3 of us touched on that, even in training camp. And that's why we thought that the strength of the strength of this team was in the offensive line, because these same 5 guys were coming back. So you did have to shuffle a little bit. You move Ruiz, you plug Throckmorton in, you have Armstead and or Pete in or out of the lineup. So I think when these guys get back, especially McCoy, that continuity and communication is going to improve drastically. But the players on the field still have to do their job better than what they have.
Yeah. The only thing I can say about the Jameis effect is Jameis is getting rid of that ball in 3 seconds or longer, as opposed to Drew, who was getting rid of it in about 2 seconds. Right. So, that does make a difference for a guy like Pete, makes a difference for a guy like Ruiz, because the ball's out of his hands that much quicker. We talked about this in previous shows. Jameis is looking, reading, doesn't trust his decisions and overthinking. So he's holding on to that ball a little bit longer. When he does drop back, plant that back foot and make the decision to throw, the offensive line looks better. The ball gets out of his hands quicker. All those things happen. That said, yes, Ramczyk is not having a good season right now. Ruiz is playing out of position for what he's prepared to do, so it's a learning curve for him. Andres Pete has had his struggles, especially in the passing game. He got the whole Mike Bell treatment this weekend from Sean Payton. Kind of shoes you got on, because he said he didn't have the cleats on after spending all this week talking about the field at FedEx Field being thick and slow and clumpy. You need to have cleats, and Pete didn't have his cleats on. And at one point, the guy got under his pads. And listen, before we get the whole, well, that's just Pete. Anybody gets under your pads, that's your ass when you're an offensive lineman. That's how you beat an offensive lineman. Get under his pads, and you got him, and you just push him into the quarterback. We've seen our guys do that. And you're right, Hurst has played much better than Armstead has played this season in that spot. So to me, it's a combination of the two. I'm leaning more towards inconsistency of the offensive line due to injury, and just not, for whatever reason, they don't look focused. And I think that is carried over to the running game too. We'd be remiss, though, if we didn't talk about probably the best player on the Saints roster right now, and that's Blake Gilligan. In fact, they have a name for him after, and I got to give these guys credit, it's a great nickname. After the Washington game, punting the ball and pinning it three times, not consecutive, but three consecutive punts, I guess, inside the 5-yard line. The Washington team, formerly known as the Redskins, had to start inside their own 5, and the nickname now is "Welcome to Gilligan's Island."
Yep.
You're going to start your drive 95 yards to score a touchdown. Has he been a pleasant surprise for you too?
Absolutely.
You know what? I watched the kid at Penn State, and I loved him. Loved him there. I knew that he had a booming leg. Felt coming out of college that he needed to work on his directional, kicking. He obviously did that. And listen, he learned from the best. Thomas Morrison is one of the best to have ever done it. And I hope TM6 gets in the Hall of Fame one day as the second punter ever to do so, other than Ray Guy. Odds are stacked against him, but he deserves a spot there. The Saints were wise in stashing Gillikin on injured reserve last year. We knew what they were doing when they did it, and it's paid off big dividends. At Morstead, it was time, for Thomas to move on. But he willingly took on the responsibility of mentoring Gillikin. He even said it at the time that this kid is going to take my job, and he embraced that. Set his ego aside, and Gillikin, obviously, the young man learned from Thomas. They're still close. They still exchange text phone calls all the time, and I think Gillikin was. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say the best player on the roster, but he was as much a factor for that win as anybody else on that team.
Absolutely. I and Sean, I'm going to ask you about him in a minute too, but it really did affect me that Thomas Morstead was leaving, because aside from ambush and the great job he did punting, Morstead, the saying is, you love New Orleans, New Orleans will love you back. Morstead clearly has embraced the city. He is going the Archie Manning route too. He owns a house in the city. He may be playing for the Jets, but he comes back to New Orleans to live in New Orleans. He's raising his family in New Orleans. He will be a New Orleanian. And I enjoy following him on social media, the pictures of his family, the jokes he makes when he doesn't punt in the game. I deactivated myself, or Thomas Moore said inactive for the game because he didn't have to punt, and he missed out on many Pro Bowls because they didn't use him, and he was a Pro Bowl kicker. So it was very hard for me to see him go. And part of me, the selfish part of me was hoping that Gillikin was going to struggle so we'd have an excuse to bring Thomas Morstead back. But I cannot be unhappy with Gillikin's this performance. It's just been stunning. When he punts, I'm like, we're flipping the field. Again, like I used to say with Morstead, we're flipping the field. And that is such a relief for someone who watched Russell Erxleben punt. That is such a relief for me. So, yes, I'm very happy with him. Sean, your thoughts?
I feel the same way as you two guys. There's nothing more that you could ask for or even expect out of the guy. He's at this point right now, he's everything that Thomas Morstead was for this team.
Absolutely. Okay, so Sean, I'm going to ask you about your other favorite player, and not PJ Williams, who got the interception. We won't talk about him. But
even a stopped clock is right twice a day.
He just happened. It's so funny. Every time PJ Williams makes a big play, I'm like, Sean is just gritting his teeth right now. This is killing him. No, Marshawn Lattimore. Once again, we saw the Pro Bowl shutdown quarterback, Marshawn Lattimore. Granted, he's going against probably my favorite player on the Washington team, McLaurin. Former Ohio State player, teammate. They played together for years. So he really eliminated him. And what was funny was that Washington's attitude was they were going to test, of all people, test Lattimore with McLaurin. They didn't move McLaurin around. They didn't do anything with him. They just wanted to see one-on-one matchup. McLaurin against Lattimore. Let's see who's going to win this one. And he held him to 4 meaningless catchers. You and I have talked about this before. It's maddening that we don't get this every week. The Giants game, we didn't get that version of Lattimore. So I'm going to ask you, how do you feel about that performance, and how do you feel about Lattimore's season thus far?
I think he's played a little bit more consistently than in recent seasons, and I hope that continues to trend that way.
Bob, your attitude about Lattimore and Lattimore's performance so far this season?
I'll tell you, and we rarely see defensive backs we rarely see cornerbacks win this award, and I acknowledge it's only a quarter of the way through the season. Marshawn Lattimore, through 5 games, is among the Defensive Player of the Year candidates as of right now. He is just playing that well. And like you guys said, we've seen the inconsistencies with Sean. He takes not plays off. He takes games off, halves off. And we saw that last week against the Giants. But other than that, he has been on top of his game. I mean, this is a guy that is 3 weeks removed from hand surgery. And he's out there shutting down a guy like McLaurin, who is easily one of the top 5 receivers in the NFL today. It was a true battle, play after play with those guys, all Sunday. And McLaurin did have, he was targeted 8 times. No, I'm sorry, he was targeted 11 times. He caught 4 balls. Only 2 of those were on Marshawn's coverage. He was targeted 8 times. Caught 2 for 31 yards, and Marshawn just came up with some of the biggest plays that you could ask for from a defensive back. And it's not only Marshawn, it's the level that Paulson Adebo is playing too. And I mean, I know people were coming down on Adebo the last couple of weeks. I think Adebo has still played extremely well. Remember, these guys don't have a pass rush in front of them right now.
No,
which is as shocking as what the Saints, ranking of 32nd, in passing offense offensively is. The Saints have 8 sacks. Only the Chiefs have fewer sacks after 5 games. That's not so. We expected the pass rush to support the secondary, not the other way around. Mm-hmm. And Marshawn, Adebo, Marcus Williams is playing out of his mind too. And even Malcolm Jenkins. Malcolm Jenkins doesn't look 87 years old like I thought he did last season. Malcolm Jenkins has dipped his toe into the fountain of youth. And PJ Williams, I hate him too. Sean knows this. We bitch about him every single week. But PJ makes plays. As long as you don't ask him to cover anybody, he's going to make plays for you. And I think Marshawn Demario Davis is still the leader of this defense. And Demario is the monster, that makes this unit go. But Marshawn Lattimore is every bit his equal as far as production right now.
Okay, well, then we're going to shift gears a little bit as the last topic for the night. Since you brought it up, Adebo, I felt the same way too. A lot of people were really bashing Adebo and talking about how he should have gotten benched because of his performance versus the Giants, only because Roby's on the team, so that's another name they know. I guarantee if Crawley or PJ were the guys that were backing Adebo up, they would not be calling for Adebo to be benched. But I like Adebo. And I think he's probably the best pick that we've had of this draft class. But there's a guy shooting up there pretty quickly who is looking, and people hated this pick. I mean, hated this pick in the second round. Pete Werner. Bob, your take on Pete Werner, and then Sean, right after that, your takes on Pete Werner.
First, I liked the Pete Werner pick at the time. This guy was a player at Ohio State, and I was disappointed that Werner was sidelined most of training camp and both preseason games, and to open up the regular season because I wanted to see him in the lineup. I knew Zach Bond. I like Zach Bond, but I knew Zach was going to be exposed at some point, for his liability and his vulnerability in coverage, and sure enough, he was. But at that point, Werner was ready to go, and he's balled out since then. He's not the downhill guy that Caden Ellis or Zach Bond are, but they don't need him to be. They need Pete Werner to be a Quan Alexander kind of guy. They don't need Pete Werner to stuff the run, although he's played better against the run than what I thought he would. They need Pete Werner to cover and make plays in space, and that's exactly what he does. And we hope Quan comes back healthy. And if and when that happens, imagine this athletic linebacking core that's going to make plays sideline to sideline. But even without Quan in the lineup, that's forced them to heat more on the shoulders of Pete Werner. And he's responded big time the last 2 weeks. And that's allowing them to be even more aggressive with Demario Davis. It's just like, you could take a guy like Lattimore, put him on the opponent's best receiver, and that makes your entire defense better because you can get more aggressive and more creative. Pete Werner, as long as Pete holds up in coverage and makes plays in space, they can unleash the beast incarnate, Demario Davis. And that's what I think Peyton Turner has a ways to go, but I still like the way he's coming along. I'm with you guys. I love Adebo. I love the pick when they made it. But Pete Werner, Pete Werner is my top rookie for the Saints right now because of what he has meant to the rest of the defense.
Sean, your thoughts on Pete Werner?
I couldn't have said it any better than what Bob did. I agree with everything he said.
Okay. I'm gonna have to start asking you first, Sean, and let you talk, and then let Bob go. So, I feel the same way. One of the things that always bugged me about this team in previous years is tight ends having big games against us, because it's like, we never have been able to find anybody who can cover a tight end. I'm not saying Pete Werner is the answer, but Pete Werner, at least, he had one great breakup on a tight end pass that I saw Sunday. But at least with Pete Werner, I see there seems to be somebody who can actually cover a tight end. And remember that he is a receiving option. You know, it's like most of the time the Saints are looking at him like, why is this offensive lineman coming downfield? Oh, hell, he can run. You know? So I enjoy that, just like I enjoyed Zach Bond, at least in preseason and early in the season, being able to snuff out the damn bootleg option pass. You know, I appreciated that. So I'm looking forward to seeing him progress. I want Quan to come back because I think Quan gives him, because of his experience, gives him more dimension. But, you know, Werner is somebody that is growing in this defense and is getting better and better. But Adebo is probably the best player we've gotten so far out of this draft, only because I think Turner is much more raw, and then getting injured kind of holds him back a little bit. He's not ready to be a primetime player yet. He's probably about a year away. Sean, I know you got to go. We kind of went over like we always do when we start talking about stuff. Next week's a bye, and then we get into the heavy part of the schedule. We play Seattle in Seattle, even without Russell Wilson. We host Tampa on Halloween night, and you know Tom Brady's. Speaking of the fountain of youth, Tom Brady's been in the freaking Lazarus pit. For you Batman fans, y'all might know what that is. You know, he is playing better than guys who are nearly half his age. And I'm looking at guys like Patrick Mahomes, guys like Jared Goff. You know, he is just lighting teams up. He is incredibly comfortable in this offense, playing their no risk it, no biscuit throws, even at 43 friggin' years old. So, you know, that's going to be a hell of a challenge coming up. And then after that, you know, I don't know the schedule that closely, but it gets a lot harder now. So we're going to need all hands on deck. I figure next week we'll talk a little bit more about, you know, the draft class, some of the grades on other positions like linebacker, secondary, receiving core, that kind of stuff. And it's probably, think about this: who has been your biggest disappointment for next time? Who's your biggest disappointment on this team?
Adam Trotman.
Wait, what? Adam Trotman? You're gonna just throw that out there right away? Adam Trotman. Okay. Yeah, the Trotman hype train was pretty damn strong. But we'll talk about that all next time. In the meantime, thank you guys for joining us. Hey, next weekend's a stress-free weekend as far as Saints football. You don't have to watch the Saints play. You get to watch everybody else play.
I get to sleep.
You get to sleep? There you go. So anyway, we'll see you next time Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.